Order. Richard Holden to move the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Dowd. And I just want to start today by paying tribute to the family of Andrew Rowlands, who's one of my constituents who died in 2020. His parents, Karen and John, are here today. I've met them before, and I've also met their daughter, Becca, as well. Now, Andrew Rowlands was killed in a car crash in June 2020. The car he was travelling in was bought not long before for £100. It had no valid MOT. It was described by the judge at the time as a wreck. The driver of that vehicle had no driving licence. They hadn't even had a driving lesson. Yet they'd still been able to buy the vehicle. And in June 2021, the person who was driving the car at the time of Andrew's death was jailed. And later that year, I met John in my constituency surgery. The request of the Minister today is to look at one simple change to the law, really. It's that if you want to buy a car, you should have to have a driving licence. It's quite simple. It's a simple change to the V5 form. At the moment, you can voluntarily fill in the date of birth of the person purchasing the car and the driving licence details. All we want to do is to see that made mandatory, and that would prevent people without driving licences being able to buy cars. You have to provide a licence if you want to buy a shotgun or a rifle, and you have to be over the age of 18. You have to provide ID to buy alcoholic drinks, or a lottery scratch card, or a lottery ticket. To scrap a car, you have to provide ID and a UK bank account. Yet to buy a car, even a totally unroadworthy one, as the one driven on the day that Andrew was killed, you don't need to do those things. It's taken on trust on the V5 form that you're providing, that you're able and a suitable person to own a vehicle. Now, I think in the modern day, it's totally unacceptable for somebody without a driving licence, without even having a driving lesson, to own a car. There are three reasons for this, and the first of all is obviously the death of one of my constituents. We don't want to see more young people getting killed because other people can buy vehicles which are totally unroadworthy and use them on the public highway. But this has broader implications, and since I met John in my constituency office, I've actually been talking more broadly to Durham Police, to the rural community as well, and just to find out what other impacts such a change could have. Well, one of the changes that I spoke to Durham Police about is that they're very concerned that so-called community vehicles, basically, I buy a car off anybody and I don't provide my address or details because I sort of can fill it in, but there's no requirement to check a driving licence, there's no requirement to put down a date of birth, it's just an option. That those vehicles are then used in county lines drug trafficking. They're also used to move people around the country. These cars often will be parked up somewhere slightly out of sight, and then they're easy to use. So there's a real crime angle there for towns and cities. But speaking to local farmers, there's also a real rural crime angle on this too. I've lost count of the number of farmers since I've been elected in North West Durham who've got in touch about people trespassing on their land. But it's not trespassing in the case of some form of poacher from the 1940s or something with a couple of pheasants under their jacket. These are people going out there, driving through their farm gates, smashing up their land, destroying their crops, worrying their livestock, allowing them out onto the roads.
Would my honourable friend give way?
I'd be delighted to give way to my honourable friend for Penrith and the Border.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I applaud my honourable friend, the member for North West Durham, for bringing forward this debate, this important issue, and for highlighting the tragic case from his constituency. Would my honourable friend agree with me that the rural crime that he is talking about is part of the bigger picture that people in rural communities have to face? And it could be vehicle crime, it could be property damage, it could be fly tipping, poaching, farm animal machinery theft, animal theft. And this is all part of a bigger picture that our rural communities have to suffer. And it's great that Cumbria Police, Durham Police are working very hard to support these communities. But does he agree with me that these rural crimes have a major impact on the mental health of people in these rural communities?
And I thank my honourable friend for making that point. They do have a big impact on people in rural communities, particularly on the mental health, because of the isolation element of living in a rural area as well. But I think he makes a broader point about the use of these vehicles for other crimes as well. And that's what, in conversations I've had with the police, you often find that if people are involved in some of these, what might be considered by some low-level crimes such as lamping or poaching, they're actually usually involved in other crimes in other places as well. And the fact that they're able to move around almost at will by using basically vehicles which nobody can really trace is a major issue, and that's one of the that's exactly the issue I'm trying to point to at the moment. Some of the farmers I recently met over in Satley, in my constituency, have faced these issues on a regular basis, so regular that they've had to set up their own local WhatsApp group. Fences being driven through, thousands of pounds of damage to farmers, but impossible to trace the ownership, even if they can spot a vehicle, and even if they can get a driving licence, they can get the number plates on them, because these vehicles have basically been disappeared into the system. In Stanhope in my constituency, in fact, all the way up in rural Weardale, farmers have faced similar issues, and it was in fact one of the first constituency surgeries I did after being elected in Stanhope Town Hall, where this issue of rural crime and this untraceability of vehicles was brought to me. And more recently, down in Muggleswick, during the pandemic, when people were meant to be staying at home, there were people driving these vehicles to do drug deals in rural areas, totally untraced. And when the people phoned into the police to say, we've got the number plates, because the people have done the right thing on their farms and rural houses, put CCTV up, it's totally useless if you can't actually trace the ownership of the vehicle down. And that's what this change would mean. It would mean that you can trace the vehicle ownership. It would prevent people from being able to therefore use them to commit rural crime. And thirdly, it would also it also stop people who haven't got driving licences from using them. I think we've seen the impact that the scrappage scheme, the changes to the scrappage scheme have made. We used to hear all the time about people nicking bits of railway and the railways having to be stopped. We used to hear about people dying in substations when they were trying to nick bits of expensive metals from substations. We used to hear about church roofs having the lead stripped off them regularly. All of that ended from a simple change to the law, which made you had to provide ID and a bank account if you were selling scrap metal. It was a really simple change. All I'm seeking is a similar change for people when they're selling cars. I'm not asking the Minister today for an immediate yes/no to a piece of legislation, but what I am asking from her today is I want to be able to meet her, talk about this in more detail, and find a suitable legislative vehicle where we can actually have a look at this and examine this. I can't see why the government wouldn't want to push forwards with this, because it's got tackling that rural crime angle, it's got tackling the crime and the exploitation of young people in our towns and cities element to it, and it's also got the ability to stop more tragic deaths like that of Andrew from happening in the future. I think it's a sensible change. I can't see the opposition to it coming in coming in against it. So will the Minister just commit today to meeting with me to talk about this further and to see what we can do to make this very sensible change to save lives. Thank you very much.